So we've all been in that situation where a game is spiraling out of control, the enemy is either just pushing the payload non-stop, capping points, and you really just can't stop them. You don't know what to do. In today's video, we're going to talk about exactly that thing and how to stop it once it's already started. In other words, how to stop the bleeding. Now, some people, when you ask them this question, simply respond with, well, don't give up, keep trying. You know, as Zenyatta says, make defeat an impossibility. Well, this isn't very true, and yes, of course you can't give up, that part is true. However, just simply not giving up isn't enough to stop what is already happening. You need to do something different in game and change something. So what are we going to do and what are we going to change to stop the enemy from continuously pushing onto us or stomping us every time we get to the objective? Every game is different, so we're going to go over a few strategies, but first we'll talk about the most prominent and most common reason people lose games, and it's the staggered death cause. The staggered death cause is simply when half of your team dies and they're about to respawn, and then the other half of your team dies as the first half respawned. Now, it obviously doesn't have to be 50-50, but you get what I'm saying. Some of the team dies and the other part of the team dies at a different time. You may be wondering what's wrong with this. Well, nothing is wrong with your team dying at different times. You should try to avoid it. I mean, if the first half of your team dies, like 3 players are dead, you should definitely be falling back and waiting for them to respawn because you don't want to feed the enemy ult charge, but simply dying at different times isn't the problem. The problem arises when these two different groups of the team that died at different times start attacking the objective at different times. What happens here is your whole team is never together to actually push a point, and the enemy team is. They're all on the point defending it. So if you're not attacking with your full force, there's no way you can actually expect to take the point. I've seen this happen a lot, and sometimes it's really easy to avoid. Honestly, if you start playing and you're just playing mindlessly, it's super easy to not notice the fact that your team is never together actually pushing the point. This problem really isn't hard to solve. In fact, most of the work you're going to do to solve this problem is recognizing that it happened. Whenever you're on the attacking team and you can't seem to push the point or take the objective or move the payload, whatever it is, take a look at your team and wonder, are they all pushing together? Are you all pushing at the same time? And do you have good communication when you do? Also, I know some of you are going to write this off as a noob tip and say, you know, this never happens to me. I'm not that stupid. I can promise you it has and it will. I kid you not, I have seen this in pro play. Yes, albeit not very high pro play. I saw it happen at a tournament with pro teams, but it did happen. I saw a team in a tournament with other teams that were professionals actually do this wrong, and it was kind of painful to watch. Now, I want to also say that I'm not saying I'm better than these people. I'm not. They simply messed up. Their communication was probably bad because they were flustered. They were tilted because they had lost some games before. And all I'm saying is this can happen to you, so actually do watch out for it. I promise you it can, it will. Look out for it and try to avoid it. Now, another very common reason games are lost occurs when you're defending on escort. So the enemy team is trying to push a payload and you're trying to stop them. Very frequently, I see this mistake made. The defending team gets wiped, or at least most of the team dies, and hopefully they recuperate it in spawn or somewhere else. That way the staggered death cause doesn't occur. And even when this does happen and they do recuperate, they can often find it hard to stop the enemy's momentum. They're on the payload and they're pushing it, and for some reason, you just can't stop them. Well, usually, at least in lower levels of competitive play, and even I've seen it in rank 60 plus play, people are trying to take the payload by force. The defending team very often wants that payload right away, so they push into the attacking team and try to take it. This is wrong. You do not want to do this. The better way is to set up at the next choke point. The next choke point that the payload is going to approach. And once you're at this choke point, you have the advantage. The enemy no longer has momentum. Now that you're at this choke point, you can treat the game simply like a control game. The point is behind you and you're trying to stop the enemy from getting to it. If you think this sounds simple, it's simply because it is. It's very simple. You need to take the enemy's momentum away by setting up at a choke point and expecting them. Be ready for when they round that corner and when the payload is pushed, because when you see the payload moving, you basically have an indication of where the enemies are, which will give you a nice advantage. I've seen this strategy a lot, so I know it works. It happens in pro play a good amount of games. Now, what you have to be aware of though is once you stop the enemy's momentum, you can't just quit there. A lot of people will either quit and just sit at the same choke point, which isn't very good because the enemy now knows how you're set up, they know how to counter you, or the team will push way too hard and try to stop the enemy from even reaching the payload again and lose their advantage. What you need to do is find something in the middle of those. Don't push too hard so the enemies wipe you and regain their momentum, and don't sit still and just wait for them to come again because now they know what to expect. What you need to do is move up to the next choke point that's close to the payload, but not too far in front of it and not too far behind it. If you successfully stop their momentum, you successfully won a fight. So you really want to capitalize on that by moving forward, but don't overextend. It's pretty simple. Practice it. Be sure to use this. It will help you win more games, I promise. The last common cause of losing games that we're going to talk about today is possibly the hardest to notice. This cause is the stale team composition cause. This is when your team doesn't realize they need to switch heroes or counter an enemy hero because they're all doing okay. But what I mean by this is everybody's almost doing good. Maybe you're all 4 and 5, you have one more death than you do eliminations. Basically what I'm saying is none of you are doing terrible. So you're all thinking in your head, if only my team would step it up, I'd be doing great. But right now, I'm probably the best one. I'm the only one that's even remotely close to doing good. I don't need to switch. My team needs to switch. They're the ones that need to find a new hero. And this is a very easy mindset to get in, especially when you play quick play a lot, and there are times when you do carry games. Your team is terrible, and they're really holding you back. That does happen. It does occur. Sometimes if you have a really bad team, the best you can do is 5 and 5 or something, even if you are feeling good. But what's going to make you a better player, and what's going to help you win more games, is asking your team simply, how are you guys doing? Because if they all say they're doing okay, they're not saying they're doing too great, they're not saying they're doing too terribly, chances are someone needs to switch heroes. But none of you realize it because none of you are doing truly bad. Teams that do truly bad can often make better comebacks because they realize what they need to fix. They're like, well, this guy is doing nothing and this enemy Genji is absolutely stopping on us. But when the games are close, sometimes it's harder to see what you need to fix. So the real solution here is communicating with your team. Find out if they're actually holding you back, because chances are they're not. Remember, the game gives you a competitive rank for a reason, so the people on your team should be remotely close to you in skill level. And of course, they can have bad games or they can have great games, but odds are, statistically speaking, a lot of the time they're doing just as good as you are. So when you think your team is holding you back, communicate with them. Find out if they actually are doing terrible. If they say they're just doing okay and everybody's like, we're doing okay, then you need to make a switch. And what I recommend doing is switching your team composition so it slightly, not greatly, more counters the enemy team composition. The reason I don't say make it so it greatly counters the enemy team is you don't want a too niche of a team. If you make your whole team so it counters theirs, they're just going to switch heroes and stomp you back. So slightly counter the enemy team. Try to figure out what type of hero switch would give your team a slight edge, and hopefully that'll be enough to tip the scales and help you win the game. That's all the tips we have for today, guys. I'm working on trying to get the ultimate guide done for tomorrow, but I'm not actually sure we're going to get there. I'm going on a trip with some friends this weekend, so I won't be able to make videos from Friday to next Wednesday. I know it's a long time off. Normally, I would prepare ahead some videos for this, but I don't think I'll be able to, guys. So I think you're actually going to be without videos for a good 4-ish days. So I apologize for that, and I'll try to remind you in whatever tomorrow's video is, but hopefully you all enjoyed today's. If you did, be sure to leave a like down below, and I will see you guys all later. Lone Hawk, out.